military professional crews from midships, but everybody else is, like I said, out here living in out of sea baggage, living in a hammock. You can think of this room we're in right now as essentially a combination of living room, bedroom, and dining room for roughly 30 people all summer long. Not necessarily the same 30 people because, as I said, those groups of trainees, they're going to shift out after about 2.5, 3 weeks. And after a few days with nobody on board, another group will come on. So if you're coming on here as one of the sail trainees, or even as one of the volunteers from the museum to help fill out the crew, aside from the fact that you have to be prepared to stand your watches, obey orders, and get your work done, you better be able to get along with people. And you better not have an overly developed sense of privacy, because there isn't any. Okay? These tables are slung down here from deck heads when meals are served. Those chests are sitting on the screw on the mess gear. Hammocks are slung from the battens up here, this high off the deck, so you can move around underneath them. And when the ship is underway at night, probably about 2/3 of them are occupied at any one time, while the others are on deck as deck watch and handling the ship. But of course, in any major operation, everybody on deck handling the sails. That's why you have to be able to move around underneath the hammocks to relieve the watches and respond to emergencies at night. Daytime, the hammocks are all taken down, taken up on deck and stored in the hammock nettings out of the way, so this is open and clear. Now, we have a lot of stuff on board today that they wouldn't have had 200 years ago, so we've got the Coast Guard, insurance underwriting, and department. For instance, we have 2 diesel engines. Nobody's going to let you leave the dock behind this bulkhead here. So the wall was called on board ship. There's the bulkhead. We try to kind of hide most of the stuff as possible. That bulkhead up forward there, that would not have been here either. That's one of the 3 watertight bulkheads that were installed in the ship when we got our 2006-2007 refit to get certified as a Coast Guard sailing school vessel. Up forward of that today is all the modern galley spaces, nice stainless steel food preparation areas, places to wash dishes, a nice gas-powered cooking stove. The only thing that was on here before that was a wood-fired cooking stove, not appreciably different than a merchant vessel a couple hundred years ago. That wood-fired cooking stove is still up there, but it's rarely used. Also up forward there are 3 modern marine heads, or toilets. Obviously, the EPA will not let you do what would have been the case 200-odd years ago. I'll let you figure that out for yourself. So you can imagine that area up there is all, that's all open, and that extends forward about 18 feet or so, narrowing up to the bow. That would have been the conditions 200 years ago. Small cabins on either side for some of the ship's warrant officers, and for storing some of the specialist gear along the boats and ship's carpenter, etc. This bulkhead wouldn't have been here because we wouldn't have had engines. This would have extended about 12 feet further back aft to the bulkhead between the crew spaces and the wardroom, which is officers' quarters back aft. Right? Now, with 30 to 40 people on board today, it's a fairly crowded way to live, and like I said, it's fairly disciplined. It's roughly the equivalent of a merchant ship 200 years ago. A full military crew for a vessel this size, however, is much larger, at minimum 135. Keep in mind those guns I pointed out on deck, a 7-man crew to operate just one of those guns. So 70 men fully man just one broadside. Add to that, now you have the gunner and the gunner's mate down in the magazine, roughly about where the engines are today, handing out powder to powder monkeys to take up the guns. Powder monkeys would be ship's boys, probably around 13 to 14 years of age. There'd have been anywhere from 8 to 10 of those running powder from the magazine up to the guns. There'd been a contingent of a dozen to maybe 20 Marines gathered amidships for any boarding party. There'd been a couple of Marines acting as sharpshooters up each of those fighting tops, along with a couple of sailors to do emergency rigging repair. The bosun and the bosun's mate, the ship's carpenter's mates, they'd be standing by to repair battle damage. The surgeon and the surgeon's mates would be back in the wardroom to treat the wounded. So yeah, there's well over 100 men there, just there already, and no one is actively sailing the ship yet. So full military crews on the vessels 200 years ago were very, very crowded. Niagara actually had a larger crew than that. We have a crew list for her for September 10th of 1813 with 156 names on it. I'm not sure where you put them all. They're on board for day sales when we've been close to 100, which is our modern license maximum, and it's pretty tight at that point. Now you'll note the deck planking here is all designed to completely lift up to get access to the bilges, that's both for maintenance in the winter and to access the other stuff that is down below there. Now historically what would have been down there would mostly have been lead ballast, because the original ship was even more shallow draft than this one, and had 25 plus tons of heavy artillery up on deck. We have a slightly deeper draft, don't carry nearly as much weight up on top, and most of our ballast is carried permanently attached to the keel down below. There was a steel shoe fitted to the keel in 06-07, about that thick and about a foot wide, and about 95 feet long, weighing in at about 25 tons. So most of our ballast is permanently attached exterior to the keel. And under here again is a lot more modern stuff that we have. Yeah, holding tanks for drinking water, holding tanks for sewage from the heads, fuel tanks, the engines, wiring runs, and of course back aft, the prop shafts for props to make some of your diesels. Any questions about any of this?
This right here, does this open to go up there?
That hatch would normally be open just to give you air going through.
Okay.
It's sealed, it's closed up, it's battened down at the moment so that in wet weather we don't get any more rain down here. And normally you just have the one hatchway for deck access. And again, we're talking 200 years ago when there is no engine here and this extends back aft. There is a section of hatchway that would be back behind that. There is now ventilation over the engine. There's also a small hatchway up forward over the galley there, and a skylight over the wardroom back aft. So you get a lot more ventilation when the ship is underway, and you have all of those odors that we have tied up here at the back. Any other questions? Okay, this is going to be a little crowded, but we're going to try and get back to the wardrobe anyway. So, we're going to head back this way. Watch your head and your footing as we head back. There is some stuff on some of the bunks here. That is people's personal gear. Please don't touch any of that stuff.
Oh my God. Were they awfully short
We're on
back
both
then?
sides of the table.
Ow. Oh God, ow.
What is she planted?
Mostly yellow pine today. Historically, a lot of it would have been white oak.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff that was done with this reconstruction that would have been a lot more expensive to try and do in this historical way. It's like most of the masts, the heavier spars of the masts are all modern laminates instead of single timber. Most of our framing timbers are modern laminates as well. You can walk around both sides of the table here. We've got a lot of people trying to sneak back in here.
Yep.
Okay, now we are back in the wardrobe. This is officers' country back here. It is so today, just as it would have been 200 years ago. This is where the ship is administered from. There are small cabins for the ship's senior officers on either side. There is one there that the door with the door open, and there's another one in the museum, a mock-up you can take a look at. It's basically a walk-in closet with a bunk in it. But you know, a little more storage space, a lot more privacy, and a little more comfort than living out of a sea bag and sleeping in a hammock up forward with 30 or so other people today, or 130 some people 200 years ago. Captain's cabin is dead aft, where it is historically on any sailing vessel. And since we don't have a full military crew, we don't have need a full collection of officers. This cabin's been turned into a navigating station, which you can take a quick look at before we head back up on deck here when I'm done. So yeah, the function of this room is just like it would have been 200 years ago. In the regular rank and file crew, you don't come back here except on ship's business when the ship is underway. And on a commissioned warship 200 years ago, that would have been very, very strictly enforced. The only regular crew members back here would have been the wardroom stewards in here, coming back here to serve meals and clean up afterwards a couple of times a day. And anybody else that's back here, if they're back here, it's because they're in a world of trouble getting dressed down by the captain or one of the officers for some reason or another. Now, on a small warship like Niagara, this ship would have had one other major function, which I alluded to a little while ago, that the surgeon would set up back here to treat the wounded, with that dining table becoming his operating table.
Nice.
Now, there's a problem with that. It's not the one you're thinking of. It's the fact that we're above the water line. And this is a small, lightly built warship. On a larger warship, built for ocean-going service, there would be space below this. And the surgeon would set up down on the orlop deck, below the water line, protected from incoming shot. Right? Again, no space for that on this ship today, or on the Niagara 200 years ago. And the signs of this ship are by no means shot-proof. The guns I pointed out on deck, at anything under about 300 yards, will punch through 15 inches of timber like cardboard. So just because you're below deck does not mean you're by any way, shape, or form out of the line of fire. Usher Parsons was the acting surgeon on board the Lawrence, the Battle of Lake Erie, which